one thing that existed for a long time and I thought was total quackery is this thing called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Now, there's also a signal that's sent. We hear about structures in the brain like the amygdala, so-called fear center, anxiety center.
The enigma of anxiety, empowering you to reclaim control over your thoughts, emotions, and ultimately your life in a battle that will define your very existence.
But we don't have neurons that stimulate breathing for oxygen. We have neurons that sense when carbon dioxide levels get too high. So if you hold your breath, eventually carbon dioxide levels go up. And then at the moment that they reach a certain threshold, these neurons fire and trigger the gasp reflex. So in that moment, you bring in oxygen, and then of course, you offload some carbon dioxide.
Prepare to confront the relentless demons of anxiety head-on as Huberman's arsenal of techniques emboldens your spirit and equips you with the weapons needed to wage a valiant war against the pervasive grip of anxiety that has held you captive.
And the important feature of that is that it activates your muscles, it makes you prone to move, and it's biasing you towards movement and action and saying things. Now, some people might say, well, when I get stressed, I freeze. But the freeze response is actually an active response. If I were right now, I'm reasonably calm, I'm alert but calm. But if I were to try and stay completely still, that's actually very hard to do.
Enter a realm of profound transformation as Huberman's wisdom becomes your guiding light in the treacherous maze of anxiety, illuminating a path strewn with courage, resilience, and unwavering determination to break free from its suffocating embrace.
That reached out about this is you can also raise your stress threshold. You can, let's say you're the kid or the person who is not super aggro. You're not a cardio, right? Yeah. You're kind of timid, right? Chances are you're either smart about not wanting to damage yourself, right? Or it could be that you have a heightened level of anxiety.
Witness the unraveling of anxiety's dark veil as Huberman's revolutionary methods pave the way for a new era of inner peace and emotional liberation, shattering the shackles that have imprisoned your mind and restoring your rightful place as the master of your own destiny.
You have people, please don't do this because you need the right proper medical staff around, but they're great experiments of having people breathe carbon dioxide directly, and you basically panic. It's terrifying. One big gulp of carbon dioxide will make you very afraid.
Brace yourself for a visceral journey of self-discovery as Huberman's strategies delve deep into the recesses of your soul, unearthing the root causes of anxiety and providing the tools needed to transcend its suffocating grip once and for all.
Now, the important thing to understand is that the de-stress response, the so-called parasympathetic response, is like the opposite side of that seesaw. And that's a very slow response. So the important thing for the audience to understand is that if you feel stressed very quickly and your heart rate is up, there are things that you can do, and we will review those and discuss them. But that response happens very quickly. The expectation should never be that you're not going to get stressed.
Prepare to rewrite the narrative of your life as Huberman's profound teachings empower you to reframe anxiety as a catalyst for growth and personal evolution, transforming it from a formidable foe into a potent ally on the path to self-realization.
And so when one safely and adaptively, meaning you survive, moves through a threat or toward a threat, it's rewarded as a positive experience. And so the key, it actually maps very well to cognitive behavioral therapy and a lot of the existing treatments for trauma, is that you have to confront the thing that makes you afraid. So otherwise you exist in this very low level of reverberatory circuit activity where the circuits for autonomic arousal are humming, and they're humming more and more and more. And we have to remember that stress and fear and threat were designed to agitate us so that we actually move. So the reason I mention this is I think a lot of times people think that the maximum, stress response or fear response is to freeze and to lock up. But that's actually not the maximum stress response. The maximum stress response is to advance, but it's associated with reward. It has positive valence.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's this kind of, everyone always thinks about the bell shape, the sort of hump shape curve for, at low levels of arousal, performance is low, and as it increases, performance goes higher, and then it drops off as you get really stressed. But there's another bump further out the distribution where you perform very well under very high levels of stress. And so we've been spending a lot of time in humans and in animals exploring what it takes to get people comfortable to go to that place. And also to let them experience how there are heightened states of cognition there. There's changes in time perception that allow you to evaluate your environment at a faster frame rate, essentially. This is the Matrix, as a lot of people think of it. Yeah. But we tend to think about fear as all the low-level stuff where things aren't worked out. But there are a lot of different features to the fear response. And so we think about it quantitatively, and we think about it from a circuit perspective in terms of outcomes, and we try and weigh that against the threat. So we never want people to put themselves in unnecessary risk, but that's where the VR is fun, because you can push people hard without risk of physically injuring them.
What's going on here? We've heard of adrenaline and people talk about adrenal burnout or being overactivated or anxiety or trauma, but they all hinge on this system or this continuum of arousal. So what controls our level of alertness and calmness? I'm going to get into a little bit of scientific detail, and then I'm going to get into some data that's actionable. Now, first of all, the system that governs this balance between alertness and calmness is called the autonomic nervous system, but the name is unfortunate because today we're going to talk a lot about how one can control this system of alertness and calmness. And yet, autonomic makes it sound as if it's not under our conscious control. There are aspects of our alertness and calmness that are under our direct conscious control. It controls our housekeeping functions like heart rate, digestion, etc. It regulates our level of arousal, our level of what we'll call alertness versus calmness, our ability to ascend or descend along the continuum that you saw on the previous slide.
When you're tired, that adenosine built up in your system. And when you move your eyes from side to side, that actually shuts down a brain center called the amygdala, which is a fear and threat detection center. Oh. So let's use an example. It's all line of tools like panic or trying to make a trick. You're afraid, right? There's often fear. I mean, it's like makes sense. You get
scary.
Yeah, you get damaged.
Yeah.
So, one thing that existed for a long time and I thought was total quackery is this thing called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where some therapist named Francine Shapiro came up with this idea that if the patient would sit down in a chair and recount some trauma or some fear and move their eyes from side to side like this, that somehow they could move through it. And people would ask me about this stuff. They're like, you study vision, you study stress. And I was like, this stuff is crazy. It's quackery. Somebody made this up. They'd say, it coordinates the activity on the two sides of the brain. It mimics REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. I thought, this is nuts. There's nothing worse than this idea. And then I ate my words because I was in science, we review papers. We're sent papers. You have to review them and critique them anonymously. And I got a bunch of papers to review that were focused on eye movements, not on trauma or fear or anything like that. And what they saw in these papers is they observed that when we move our eyes from side to side, a brain area called the amygdala, which is involved in fear and threat detection, it's kind of universal neural real estate for fear, be alert, all the panicky stuff. That area was suppressed. And it turns out it makes sense because when you move forward through space, whether or not you're skateboarding, if it's self-generated motion, you're walking, you're running, you're cycling, you're skateboarding, as you move through space, the visual images are going by you like this, but you don't experience them as a blur. Just like if you took a picture on your phone and you moved your phone, it'd be blurry, but you have what are called image stabilizing eye reflexes, and there's a well-known system for this.
Now, there's also a signal that's sent. We hear about structures in the brain like the amygdala, so-called fear center, anxiety center, but we also get signals sent from the brain, the hypothalamus, which is basically above the roof of your mouth, down to what's called the sympathetic chain ganglia. It has nothing to do with sympathy for other people. Sympa means together, and basically a row of neurons that goes from about the base of your neck until your navel, dominoes, and releases adrenaline into your body.